Hurts lost it for Smith. It's a touchdown. Devontae Smith.
Bijan Robinson. Give him the ball. Touchdown, Texas. He's got room. Lamar Jackson. Open field. Inside the 20. He is in. Lamar. Spectacular.
Welcome to the Saturday Air Raid, part of the NFL Lab Network. I'm your host, Johnny Roberts. And with me, as always, is my good friend and esteemed colleague. It is Brad Bolt. How are you tonight, Brad?
Excellent, mate. I am counting down not just the days, it's the hours, the minutes. The season's almost upon us.
You can say hours because college football starts tomorrow, although by the time you're hearing this, it'll be in progress. Week one.
But we've had the roster cut down day. We've now had the practice squad signing. Everything's happening, and now we count down for the very first game of the season with the Chiefs and the Lions, which I'm really looking forward to.
Right before we jumped on, I was just sitting here and I'm just thinking holy crap, the season is here. There is no more waiting. We can do this. We can get into this.
We've slogged through months of terrible Twitter takes and terrible just people being bored, and we're finally here. We get to finally see some football.
But before that, we have a fantastic show for you. This is 53 players we cannot believe did not make the 53-man roster. And when I say cannot believe, I do use that term loosely because there's a lot of players here. It's okay, yeah, I can see that for sure. But also there is a few surprise moves. Not as many as years past, I will say. There was a 2019 post going around where it was wow, there were trades happening all over the place. We didn't know what was going to happen today with Jonathan Taylor. Was he going to go to the Dolphins? Was he not? Were they asking too much? Were they going to trade Jalen Waddle? Absolutely not. It's been explosive, but here we are. The dust has settled, and I think we're ready to get into it.
Yeah, I think we're ready to go and dive into what us degenerates love, or not love, but what us degenerates do, and we scour through all of these to try and see the big names. So yeah, ready to go.
So that all that college football watching is not for nothing. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe this. It really, really helps us. And if you want, leave a comment. That also helps. Follow us on Twitter. You can follow Brad on Twitter at BradBolt1. You can follow me on, actually, people are calling it now Twix. Are you privy to this?
I hadn't heard that, but I don't mind it.
Yeah, I don't mind it either. So follow me on Twix. I'm at John Lloyd Roberts, and follow NFL Lab Network as well at NFL Lab Network. Let's get into it without further ado. I want to start with the Arizona Cardinals. We're going to go top to bottom. We're going to go rapid fire. And it's actually one of the more interesting teams because they cut Colt McCoy in favor of our boy Clayton Tune. Sorry, I won't bring you into this. Clayton Tune it is. How did you see and they brought in Josh Dobbs?
I think that was the most surprising part, was because Colt McCoy, it actually seemed like he was probably going to be the starter, and then they bring in Josh Dobbs, and it's cutting Colt McCoy really, in essence, for Josh Dobbs. So that was quite a surprise that was the way that they went there with that quarterback room.
And we're also looking, the other one for me was Corey Clement. I really thought he was going to make the roster as just sort of a depth piece at running back, but I think that they're happy to tank.
Yeah, I think that's the case. And the only other one I really want to mention is just the pure fact of the name is just Andre Bocellia, because I just think of Andre Bocelli, the musician. So
I love that we're only a year apart, but for some reason, all these references where I'm just what are you talking about? We were both born in the 80s.
Yeah, I'm just an old person
at heart. All right, let's jump to the Falcons now. And not too much on the Falcons side to report, really. I mean, they do have a fairly youngish team coming out, and they did bring a lot of pieces across on defense. But I was looking at JJ Figure-Whiteside. Did not make the team, was the one for me.
Yeah, it was all. Mine was probably Slade Bolden. Yep. It was just one. He seemed like a bit of a darling amongst a lot of people. For him not to make the team, sort of was a little bit surprising. But he's probably the big name from there. The only other one for me would have been on defense was Kamiko Toure.
Yeah.
Just a lot of these guys that we're seeing here too are just names, that a lot of people might have heard.
Yeah.
And
through draft process over the years.
Yeah, draft process. Or, they might have had an odd moment in the game here or there, or, you've seen them around a fair bit. They might have jumped from team to team, but he was just a name that sort of also stuck out a little bit to me.
Yeah, and they're going to be rolling with, so I guess, Mac Hollins, Drake London, Kadero Hodge, and Scotty Miller, and a guy called Josh Ali, who I'm not familiar with.
No, me either. Actually, that's a new name to me. It's not one that I've heard before.
Moving on to the Baltimore Ravens now. So the ones that stood out to me, I guess most was Melvin Gordon.
Yeah.
Maybe because they've rolled with veteran running backs in the past, but it didn't seem likely this time round.
Yeah, and so their running backs now are J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, and Keaton Mitchell, which was the surprising part. I would have thought that he might have made in there. The other name for me that just stood out, just based off of, as I was saying before, well, there's two names that sort of stuck out were Laquan Treadwell and James Prochet.
Yeah, James Prochet, who's been sort of a Baltimore Ravens darling at heart over the years, he had a really bad preseason. He muffed a lot of punts. And he, I think, he had a lot of fumbles as well. And then I guess reached a point where like enough is enough. Yeah,
and I guess too the other one here is one that your team's actually picked up today.
Yeah,
in the waiver claim with Caillou Blue Kelly.
Yeah, Caillou Blue Kelly. I was happy with him through the draft process. I know he was a 5th round pick, but to pick him up off of waivers for nothing, I love that. I think he's gone to a great landing spot as well.
Yeah, I was a big fan of him coming out of the draft as well. Even though he was a 5th rounder, he was one of those guys that I just seemed to think he might not have been a star, but he was just going to be like, you had faith in that guy moving forward, on your team. He wasn't going to be outstanding, but he was enough there that you were like, okay, I'm happy with him in that rotation. So I was a bit surprised by that as well.
Yeah, now we'll move to the Buffalo Bills, where Andy Isabella, the former Cardinals 2nd round pick, was not able to make the team, even on special teams, which I thought he might have been able to. And the other one for me was Darrington Evans. Actually had a fairly good preseason, had to put together some good tape, but just couldn't get there in the end.
Yeah, my other two that I had were Ty Johnson, running back as well, and also Isaiah Coulter.
Yeah,
just for names, because the depth behind Stephon Diggs, it's Gabe Davis, and then it's Khalil Shakir. It's not really it, and Khalil Shakir didn't really do too much in his rookie season, so it's more so just surprising for those to be the names that have not made the team, really.
Yeah, you've actually just reminded me of one later for the Colts in Isaiah McKenzie, I saw earlier today, got cut as well. So it's weird, and this is the other thing, is the dust is like settled, quote unquote, but there's still players getting cut and other players coming up. So,
and you'll see that a fair bit, because even with our next team that we'll talk about, Carolina
let's get to them now. We'll probably spend a bit of time on them. How did you feel it went?
There was a couple surprises for me, but I think the one that was the most surprising, well, not surprising, but they cut down to the 53-man roster, and then today they made 3 waiver claims and cut 3 more people. But the biggest, most notable name on all of that was quarterback Matt Corral, who they traded up in the 3rd round last year to take. It seems like Frank Reich would be happy to have him back on the practice squad. But he was probably the bigger name. But there are a few guys here who I really liked, and I was actually hoping we're going to make the team, but didn't end up. And it's like Spencer Brown had a pretty decent running back. He had a pretty decent training camp preseason. Cameron Peoples, I was really hoping would make the team, but he didn't really have too much of a chance to show what he did. Biggest name, I guess, Shi Smith.
Yeah, that was my one that I highlighted, because I thought he was quite good in patches, and especially when they're not like completely stacked at wide receiver, although they did bring in Amir Smith-Marset. Maybe that was sort of like the...
Yeah, and I think Shi Smith was sort of also working on special teams as a punt returner and a kick returner as well. Yeah. So Amir Smith-Marset's probably going to fill that role. So they moved on from Shi there. But just a couple of the other big names. Cameron Irving was one that was let go. Eric Rowe, he's wound up back on the practice. He's wound up back on the practice squad, but he was a pretty, he's a name. Michael Jordan, anyone who knows North Carolina and Michael Jordan, it's not the basketballer, but it's the offensive lineman.
Also not the free safety for Seattle either.
No, but probably for me, the last couple that I'll just quickly mention, Rajon Wright was an undrafted free agent. I was really hoping he was going to make the team, but I think the signing of Troy Hill late in the training camp process probably eliminated his spot from there.
Yeah.
Brandon Smith was another one who was gone, who was a Matt Rule draft pick. A lot of people had hope for him. Dion Jones, former Atlanta Falcon, was gone. And the last one that I'll mention, a lot of people were quite high on Eku Leota.
Right.
He'd had a really good training camp. So a lot of Panther fans were quite surprised that he didn't actually make the roster after what he was able to show in training camp. So they were a couple of the names for me that I was surprised that didn't make the roster.
And as a Seahawks fan, I obviously need to point out that Gary Jennings, who was trying out with the Panthers, also did not make the roster as well. Long time Seahawks trier outerer.
And I guess if anyone is also remembering, Javon Wims didn't make the team. Javon Wims is the guy known for punching CJ Gardner-Johnson when he was on the Bears.
Not even that long ago.
No. So they were the bigger names that didn't make the Panthers side.
Speaking of the Bears, we'll roll to them now. Man, imagine if we could get 32 beat writers in here and all talk about all these things. We'd have a lot of content. Let's jump to the Bears, though. So the one, not too much to report for me on the Bears side of things, other than obviously Alex Leatherwood, who I think has been claimed by another team now. But I really thought PJ Walker was in with a chance coming across from the Panthers with DJ Moore. And Tyson Badgett has beat them out. That's Nathan Peterman as well.
Yeah, so Tyson Badgett obviously had a fantastic training camp because PJ Walker wasn't the biggest name signing free agent, but he held up pretty well for the Panthers last season. Yep. For Tyson Badgett, he was an undrafted free agent as well, wasn't he?
He went to a college called Shepherd or Princeton. I'm thinking, I think it was Shepherd. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Shepherd. Never heard of it.
Yes, and he was the one who, if anyone watched anything during the Senior Bowl, his dad was the world champion arm wrestler.
Is that right?
Yeah, so there's this really funny video of him taking on Tom Pelissero on the sidelines, and Tom Pelissero is trying as hard as he can with both hands, and Tyson Badgett's dad is just sitting there just talking trash the entire time, going, "Well done, buddy, you tried your best," and just slams his hand down. So that was a funny moment. The other one, I think, from me, just name-wise, was who I really think is actually a really good player is Travis Gibson, defensive end.
I didn't catch him.
He got released. I'm surprised he's not on a team. I really like him. I think he'd be quite good on a lot of teams. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him snapped up on an actual 53-man roster at some stage soon.
Now, if you're watching us on YouTube, I did just pull a face before that was quite funny. I'm going to have to clip that for later because, when you're hitting Command Tab or in your case, Windows Tab or whatever, when you're trying to flick between applications and you accidentally hit Command Q, and I just quit all of my notes. I'm building it back up again on our lads, but let's continue. That'll make a funny clip for later. Let's go to the Bengals. For me, I guess you could say it was Trevor Siemian.
Trent Taylor,
sure. My other one was Devin Asiasi, who was Patriots' third or fourth round, maybe it was a compensatory pick from a couple of years ago. Just never that. It was the year the Patriots drafted those two tight ends like back to back. Okay, here they go.
It was him and Dalton Keene were the two tight ends,
and then they ended up ultimately bringing in Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. But there was a period there where we thought we might see the new emergence of some tight ends, and it just never really happened, and still continues to not happen.
Yeah, I think the only other two names that really stood out to me were just based off of name value alone was Hakeem Adeniji, offensive lineman, but also Sidney Jones, the fourth cornerback. So their cornerback depth will be the thing that's talked about. Bringing in, obviously, having Chidobe Awuzie coming back, Cam Taylor-Britt from last year, DJ Turner as well. So I was just a bit surprised with Sidney Jones not being on the roster, but you can't keep everyone.
That's right. Speaking of not keeping everyone, the Cleveland Browns. I've actually got a few from the Cleveland Browns. I don't know about you, but my standouts were Kellen Mond, Cade York, John Kelly, not really a standout, Anthony Schwartz, and Austin Watkins, and Demetric Felton.
Yeah, they were pretty much my guys. The other one that I can add to that was Tommy Togiai, defensive tackle.
Okay.
Just young. Like, he was last year. He was a draft pick for the Browns. I think it was third round, maybe fourth round. I can't remember just off the top of my head. But he was a guy who, you know, I think he would have had a role potentially, but didn't show enough last year. And then it was that they bring in some other guys like Dalvin Tomlinson, etc. But pretty much the guys that you mentioned, I was quite surprised that all of them were gone. Anthony Schwartz, I can see he's got the eye next to him for an injury settlement. It looks like.
Yeah, that's what it looks like to me as well. Good on Dorian Thompson-Robinson, man. He had a great preseason and he impressed and he made the team. I love to hear it.
He was fantastic this preseason. I really liked him. Like, he wasn't my favorite guy coming out of college, but he seems like one of those guys that just maybe needed to get out of college and into the NFL to really show what he was capable of being able to do. So
yeah, and that happens. Like some of these guys, it's not often, but they leave college and they get to the NFL and they just start to shine. They really like take it on board and take it all in, which is awesome to see. And slight pat on my back because I don't know if you remember, but back in our other episode the other week where it was our preseason hot take purge, I did have a bit of a comment of these like rookie quarterbacks coming into the league who, you know, I really feel like we've got like a new crop of quarterbacks coming through, and even this year coming as well. It's like there's so many good quarterbacks and they're all making the teams, and it's really awesome to see. We talked about Tyson Badgett, talked about Dorian Thompson-Robinson. We'll talk about some more as well. But before we do, got to talk about Cade York, the Browns kicker, fourth round pick.
Fourth round, I think it was off the top of my head, but he was the first kicker taken in that draft.
Yeah, unfortunately could not make the team, which if you're watching kind of makes sense. Demetric Felton, I think is a really good running back. I'm surprised he got cut.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, he's got that versatility where he was actually wide receiver in college, I believe, and then he moved to running back in the NFL. So it's sort of almost about reminds me very similar of Lynn Bowden Jr.
Yeah,
Lynn Bowden Jr. was another one of those guys who was a wide receiver running back hybrid sort of player.
Yeah,
and he was a bit of a surprise. I actually also, just looking at this list, I missed him before, but I really liked as a prospect Jalen Darden.
Yeah, okay.
Wide receiver. He was drafted by Tampa Bay, if I recall. And, you know, then he didn't make the Tampa Bay side. And yeah, but maybe this is just a bit of the, you know, sometimes we get that tape lock. We see guys that we like the film in the drafting, and then we instantly think that they're going to be fantastic, and you can't jump off that train. He just might be one of those guys for me that.
Yeah, and I've got one coming up soon as well. Now that you mentioned that, but we'll talk about that when we get to Green Bay. Let's jump now to the Cowboys, who had a interesting last couple of days, bringing in Trey Lance at the expense of Will Grier. And apparently Dak Prescott has not been too happy about the quarterback movements, is from what I hear.
I haven't heard that. That's interesting.
Apparently there's some beat reporters were asking what he thought of those movements, and he quite liked Will Grier and thought he was good for the locker room. And he doesn't understand why Trey Lance has been brought in. He was not consulted about it. So prior to it happening. So a bit of trouble in Cowboysville, potentially. The other one I had there was Malik Davis, the running back, who I thought was in with a pretty good chance. And I think he's a little bit better than Rico Dowdle. But maybe that's just me.
Yeah, I sort of thought the same, but I think that maybe just shows that the type of training camp preseason that Juice Vaughn has had, that he's ended up making a team, which we love to see. We all love little scrappy do Juice Vaughn. The other one I saw too today, it was Simi Fehoko. It looks like he's on his way to Pittsburgh as well. So he was released.
Right.
Pittsburgh, and I always get worried whenever you see the Pittsburgh Steelers pick up a wide receiver, whether it be in a draft or they sign someone. Like they've just got this. They've got this history of just taking really good wide receivers. So to see him end up somewhere there, you sort of sit there and think, oh, maybe they missed something there with letting him go. But was there anyone else on the Cowboys who stood out?
Not too much on my side, I think, but I know what you mean. It's sort of like
Jabril Cox.
Oh yeah,
Jabril Cox, linebacker, he was a fourth round pick. I thought he was in with a real good shot of making the team, especially with DeMarvion Overshown tearing his ACL and being out for the season, but he was cut, and I would be interested to see whether I'm not sure if he has landed back on their practice squad yet. No, it doesn't look like he's on their practice squad at the moment. So it'll be interesting for me to see where he ends up, because he was another guy who he's got the traits. Whether he can actually put it together is another thing.
Yeah. Now we've got to talk about these Denver Broncos, man. What is going on? So they trade away. Now it was this time last year that Albert Aquabenam, who was going to be the next big tight end in the fantasy land, that didn't transpire. He was cut from the team, and then there was another report that he got traded to the Eagles for a 7th round pick. So you never know. The other one that stood out to me was Lil Jordan Humphrey, who I quite liked as a Colorado receiver, and he was on the Saints with Sean Payton. So he's sort of like a Sean Payton guy. So I wouldn't be surprised if he actually gets elevated, given that we're starting to see, this wide receiver room at the moment for Denver. It's Marvin Mims, it's Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy is injured, but he's there. And then who have they got? Is it?
That's it. That's it. They've only got 3 wide receivers on the 53-man roster. It's those 3, and that's it.
It looks like they've signed Philip Dorsett from what see on our lads, but that's got to be in the last couple of hours.
Yeah, so that was that. Yeah, that must have been. But let's see. Philip Dorsett's being signed to their practice squad, so he's not even being signed to their 53. So it's just those 3 guys that are on the 53-man roster. So makes you wonder if maybe they've got another move in store.
Yeah, they have to, because obviously they can't roll with those guys. I do like Little Jordan Humphrey and Kendall Hinton, COVID darling, who started the game against the Saints, is finally cut.
Yeah, he had a lot of fans, not just because of that, but because a lot of people actually liked what they thought they saw from him. But the other thing for me too that was surprising was cutting Tony Jones Jr., Tyler Beatty, and Dwayne Washington.
Yeah, that pure fact.
The running backs, that obviously they're quite confident that Javonte Williams is going to be back and healthy for the start of the season. So, that they to me, if they'd kept 1 or 2 of those guys, or maybe they'd signed someone or claimed someone from waivers, probably would have led me to believe that maybe they weren't as confident in Javonte coming back. But to me, that's a sign for them that they actually seem quite confident that he not only will be back for the start of the season, but be able to handle maybe not the same workload that he was in before he got injured, but a pretty decent sort of workload for him when he came back. So interesting.
Moving to the Detroit Lions, and there's a few names now that you mentioned that at running back that have stood out. I want to start though with Denzel Mims, who was interesting that they traded only a few weeks ago to acquire him, and it looks like it's ended in an injury settlement, as you were saying. I think they gave up what was it, like I thought it was a 4th round pick,
something like that, yeah,
to acquire. But so he is not going to make the team, so that's kind of just burning that pick. But now that you mention those running backs, Craig Reynolds, Benny Snell, Devine Ezigbo, and Jamar Jefferson, the names that are standing out to me there. So they must be fairly happy with their running back room.
Yeah, so looking at their running back room, it's literally at the moment on the 53-man roster is David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Yeah, that's it. I was surprised. I understand why they cut Denzel Mims. I was hoping that Mims was going to be on that team, but I think
given the only receiver there is Amon-Ra St. Brown and
it's Josh Reynolds, Marvin Jones Jr., and Khalif Raymond.
Khalif Raymond's the other one.
But I understand. I know that he had a calf injury, so I think they thought he was going to be out for a fair few weeks with that injury. So, I guess they figured no one's going to bother picking him up while he's injured. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he ends up either back on the team once he's healthy or on a practice squad once that comes around. That's just my thoughts, because also too, we've got to remember that Jameson Williams is out for the first.
Yeah, he's gone for a while.
Is it 6 weeks or 8 weeks he's gone?
So it's 6 weeks, and then he'll be back for a week, and then they have a bye.
Yeah. So if Denzel Mims, say he happens to be healthy by week 3 when those games are going to start, if they need any depth at that wide receiver room, if they don't add anyone in the meantime, that could be a person who could be back on the lines once he's up and healthy. So I was hopeful that Denzel Mims might have actually had a chance to show what he could do, but
yeah,
we'll just have to wait and see where he ends up.
Just had a quick look at my Dynasty League because I like what you're saying to see if he's available, and he is not. So, wow.
So,
Team Dynasty League.
Yeah. Is there
anyone else?
I guess just there's the Bobby Hart and Jermaine Ifedi, just offensive linemen, but they've got the Detroit Lions have one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. So I guess it's not really a surprise, but once again, they're just sometimes when you see these names that you hear, you sort of go, oh, what, I know that name, I know that guy. I'm surprised he's not on the team. So,
oh yeah, I know that name, Jermaine Ifedi.
Yeah,
no surprise to me. Let's jump over to the Packers now. And as you were talking about, we were talking about sort of like darling receivers that we hear names that we wanted to see stick around. And again, another ex-Seahawks player here for me, it was Bo Melton out of Rutgers a couple of years ago. Didn't make the Seahawks practice team, but he was drafted alongside Derek Young, who did make the 53 for Seattle. Still kicking around, but I always thought Bo Melton was a really, really great player. I'm surprised that he's always struggled in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm surprised that he's not there as well. So they're obviously, once again, happy. Obviously, they're happy with their wide receiver room, which is a very young wide receiver room.
Dontavian Wicks, Samari Torre, Malik Heath, Jaden Reed, all the new guys.
Yeah, so I think actually probably the biggest name, and even then it's not really a name. I think the most surprising thing that's come out of it today is that it appears that the Green Bay Packers were one of the teams in on the Jonathan Taylor trade. That's the biggest surprise for me, when you've got Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon there, and they were then also they're making exploratory calls to get Jonathan Taylor. That's the surprise for me.
I think you could explain it though. Like Aaron Jones, I think he's in the last year of his contract, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he's
sort of getting on. I think they can get out of it next year. And AJ Dillon has not. He did not play well last season. So I think that they really want to try and shore that up, especially if they're going to be so young at the receiver side.
I wonder then if that was the case. I'm not sure what they were saying the deal potentially could have been, but I wonder if one of those guys would have then been on the move and which one it would have been.
Yeah.
Because like you said, do you move on from Aaron Jones, who is maybe in the last year of his contract or the bigger number sort of thing, or do you move on from AJ Dillon because you know what you've got in Aaron Jones? Do you move on from AJ Dillon? So that was just a bit of a surprise for me more than anything.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Now let's move to the Houston Texans. And to be honest, I don't have too much on the offensive side of the ball other than Larry Roundtree, who was a player for the Chargers for a couple of years. Other than the defense here, Christian Kirksey didn't make the team, Desmond King and Corey Littleton.
And also Chase Winovich didn't make the team. Like, I'm not saying that Chase Winovich is fantastic sort of guy there, but it was just, once again, another one of these names. But I'm very surprised by Christian Kirksey, Littleton, and Desmond King. Yeah, I would have assumed that they were almost locks to make that team. So
I think Christian Kirksey is a great player.
Yeah, and I mean, Corey Littleton was on Carolina last year. Didn't really do too much, so that sort of makes a little bit more sense. He barely got any playing time for the Panthers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just in my mind, they were guys that, I'd penciled in my mind that they'd made the team. So to see those guys cut was quite a big shock, actually.
Let's jump to the Colts now. And there is a few names here that I was quite surprised at. Like Kenyon Drake, for example, they brought in, I guess, to see what would happen with Jonathan Taylor. Now, Jonathan Taylor's not sticking around, and neither is Kenyon Drake, apparently. So it's kind of interesting. And then on the receiver side, Rashad Perryman, James Washington, and Amari Rodgers were the ones that I had. And even Michael Strawn, I should have put him in. Michael Strawn was one of their picks from a couple of years ago that I had high hopes for.
Yeah, and the other one that I'm just looking at here too is Al-Qadim Muhammad, the defensive end. He was a guy I sort of thought, you know, they seem like another one of those teams that they need as much talent as possible. So I thought he was going to make it, but also Ronnie Harrison, safety as well, was another guy I was sort of expecting to make the squad. So a couple big surprises there not big surprises, but a couple surprises I was expecting to make the team there as well.
Yeah, and I'm looking at their depth chart at the moment. I think it's going to change a little bit. Some guys must get elevated from the practice squad because they've got Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, Isaiah McKenzie, who, like I was saying, I thought I saw that he was cut today. Maybe I misread.
He could have been
true.
No, he could have. He quite possibly could have been. It looks as if this one that we're looking at, that's on the 33rd team, where it has this was just on deadline day, like cut down day. So anything that's happened since the 4:00 deadline yesterday, anything since then looks like it's not accounted for on this list that we're looking at here.
Yeah, but I'm also looking on Our Lads, and he's still on Our Lads depth chart as well, which is usually pretty up to date. The other one was Josh Downs, was the last receiver. So they're going to have to bring some guys back. I don't see why you would cut Isaiah McKenzie. Like, he's a great special teams player as well.
Yeah, like I said, same thought with that you had. It was a bit of a surprise that, you know, he wasn't there. I'm just having a quick look at the... No, so he's not on the... It wasn't a practice squad edition either. So, but Amari Rogers has ended up back on the practice squad there as well. Was one of those names that you mentioned. So, yeah, interesting time for the Colts.
Let's jump to Jacksonville. The one that stood out to me was Jared Snoop Connor, only because they only drafted him last year or the year before last.
I think it was last year, I want to say, but I could be wrong there.
And so they must be happy with their running back room as it stands right now. Although I thought it was only, I think they've just got up to Jermichael Hasty if I have a quick look. Yeah, and Dearness Johnson. I always forget they brought him over from Cleveland. And unfortunately, Nathan Rourke, who had that awesome highlight play in preseason, he did not make the team. Unfortunately. I'm so surprised that CJ Beathard is still kicking around. I think he's so bad.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's there too. But I guess maybe they feel like he's just, because he's been there, especially for the year before, he's got a command of that backup sort of role if they need on there. But other than that, there's no one else really here that's sticking out to me. Oh, actually, the one person that is sticking out, and there's the joke being made about it, is Doug Peterson cut his own son.
Josh Peterson.
He has ended up now today back on the practice squad. So there was the joke going around that Mrs. Peterson had made Doug sleep on the couch for the night for cutting their son. And suddenly he's wound up back on the practice squad today. So but other than that,
there's time to think about what he's done.
Yeah. Other than that, it doesn't really appear to be too many big name guys that that are really standing out for me.
Yeah, now for the Kansas City Chiefs, the one skill guy that I was looking at was Deneric Prince, who I thought was a good chance to make the team, mostly behind because they've got Isaiah Pacheco, Jerick McKinnon, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They're just kind of like, I don't know, they're like jack of all trades, master of none type guys.
Yeah, I think too, LaMichael Pirine, I was sort of thinking might have been an option to
had him there. Yeah,
to make that too. I think the big win though out of all of that is the fact that Justin Ross has made the team.
Oh yeah, I am pumping my fist.
I really am hoping he can show his talent, has a chance to show his talent, and he can stay healthy. Because as we mentioned on my show that we were talking about, if you go back and listen to that, he's actually been running with the ones as well, but there was still talk that he might not have been making the roster. The fact too that in that Clemson National Championship side, he was with wide receivers T. Higgins and Hunter Renfrow, but yet Justin Ross was the best receiver on that team. Yeah. So injuries just robbed him of having potentially what was a chance to be a top, first, second round sort of pick that he was being looked at. So
yeah, and I saw a great quote on him today from one of the wide receivers coaches that they plan on using him in set packages to begin the season for the first couple of weeks, and then they're hoping by the end of the season they can actually roll him out into like a full-time first-team wide receiver, which I'm really, really excited for.
Yeah, it'd be good to see him in that role. I guess the other one, just for a pure name sake, is the Kansas City Chiefs cut Lamar Jackson, cornerback, cornerback Lamar Jackson.
Cornerback,
So
yeah. Previously from the Jets. And did he do a stint in New Orleans? I think.
I think
Maybe.
so. I can't remember off the top of my head. I just saw the name pop up and I was like, oh, I can't believe they cut Lamar Jackson. But
The other on that side of the ball as well, Danny Shelton and Dion Bush as well did not make the team. Some more sort of key names. Let's jump to the Raiders now. For me, it was interesting. They brought in Damian Williams because they weren't sure how it was going to go with Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs comes back. Damian Williams exits. And then the other one for me was Keelan Cole. Fantasy darling from many, 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 many years ago, over like the last 4 games, I think of the 2018 or 29 season, where he was the wide receiver, let's say like 3 or 4 in that.
yeah,
highlight machine.
yeah, but the same. I guess the only other real name that stands out besides that, just sort of name that I can see and it makes sense, like that I've heard of, is Duke Shelley, cornerback.
Yeah.
But other than that, there's not a lot of guys here who stand out as big name or well-known name guys for the Raiders.
Right. Let's now jump across to the Chargers, where I actually didn't have too much on the Chargers side outside of Max Duggan, who it's like I wanted to see him do well, but to be honest, he didn't really put together a very good preseason, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense that he's going to sit on that practice squad. You know, he could still learn from, you know, your Justin Herberts, etc. I guess the other one would be, I guess, Hard Knocks favorite of a couple of years ago when the Raiders were on in Keelan Doss.
Ah, yes.
But yeah, there's not a lot of names.
Yeah,
there.
not too much from the Chargers there, but on the Rams side, again, not too much as well here. I'm surprised that Stenson Bennett beat out Ripien, but here we are. Royce Freeman didn't make the team to back up Cam Akers, and Lance McCutcheon, who I think he'll go straight back to the practice squad because I know that the Rams really like Lance.
Yeah, he is back. I've just had a quick look. He is back on the practice squad.
Yeah.
There. So, yeah, other than that, there's not a lot of other guys because this was also another team who at one stage when they had their first 90-man roster out, I think they had about 40 rookies that were on there, which were like undrafted free agents and stuff as well. So,
yeah.
But yeah, not a lot of names there. The Miami Dolphins, though, that's a different.
Yeah, we could spend some
story.
time on the Dolphins because they've done a few things. Because I was looking at Gaskin, they cut. He's now in Minnesota, and unfortunately, Robbie Chosen-Anderson was not chosen by the Dolphins.
No, Kiki Kuti is another one who's gone.
The other one. Yeah, Tyler Croft even. Jets tight end, former.
And then if you're looking at the defensive side of the ball, it's
Justin Bethel.
I was surprised at.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple names. Elijah Higgins was a name at tight end who's moved on, but I think he's actually been picked up. I did see it beforehand, but I forgot to write the team name down. But Elijah Higgins is somewhere else as well. I can't think now. But yeah, a couple interesting names there that are no longer on that Miami team.
But shout out to Eric Uzukuma. Do that again. Shout out to Eric Ezekama. Why can't I say that? I'm looking at it. Shout out to Eric Uzukama for making the team.
Well done, Eric. Good job.
Man, do you ever just like you're looking at a name and you're like, yeah, I'm saying it in my head, and then you come out to say it won't come out the right way.
It was like me the other week when we were talking about Romeo Dobbs. And I kept calling him Romeo Dubs. And then afterwards I was listening to it going, oh my God, you're an idiot. It's Dobbs. You know it's Dobbs.
I thought it was, it's Dobbs. Anyway.
Yeah.
Can move on. What are we up to? 9 minutes 4. Okay, I'll cut this. All right. On the Minnesota Vikings side of things, though, surprise cut, 7th round pick, Dwayne McBride did not make the team. I thought he was quite a good running back as well, especially in college.
Yeah, he was a bit of a surprise. I guess, to me, the only other name that I can see was N'Keal Harry, and just for name fact, but also
out for N'Keal Harry. I was shocked that he didn't make the team, to be honest.
The other one, though, I actually did see today, so after this 53-man cut down day happened was it looks like they've released Jalen Reagor.
Yeah, Jalen Reagor's gone.
So
they're rolling with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, KJ Osborne, and Jalen Naylor and Brandon Powell.
So that was a bit of a surprise. Then on the defensive side of the ball, Sheldon Day and Ross Blacklock were two surprises.
Yeah.
And the only other one for me is just a name that I know for the pure fact that he was on the Panthers at one stage was Kalen Barnes.
Right.
It was just that he was a Matt Rule college, like he played under Matt Rule in college, I'm pretty sure, and was a Matt Rule draft pick. So it's the only reason I know him. But, there's a quite surprised with a couple of those guys like N'Keal Harry and Jalen Reagor.
Yeah. Thought they were in with a shot. Now we're going to move over to the New England Patriots where they've had a bit of movement. Not sure what Bill Belichick is doing. We understand, from what we might understand, it is that they want to give the impression that Mac Jones is the guy and there is no other quarterback to look at, despite the fact that Bailey Zappi is a fan favorite from last season. And Malik Cunningham is also a fan favorite from preseason game 1. But apparently in New England, you can't be too good at quarterback because that'll bother them.
Yeah. And I mean, so not only that, so it was also Trace McSorley they've cut. Yeah, but then you look at the running backs, Ty Montgomery, Kevin Harris, JJ Taylor.
I had them down. Yep.
And then there was the trade that they had with Cleveland where they traded, was it Pierre Strong?
Yes, he's gone.
So that actually just leaves now. When you look at the roster, like the 53-man roster now, the only running backs the Pats have are Ramondre and Zeke.
Yeah.
So that was a bit
like, what are you doing, Bill?
That was a bit of a surprise. Anthony Ferkser, tight end. Surprised he was gone. Other than that, there's not a lot there that I'm sort of surprised at, but just the fact that now there's only one quarterback on that 53-man roster is a bit of a surprise. That's where the other jokes are being too, that Bill was expecting Brian Hoyer to be cut. So he wanted to bring him back for the 93rd time.
I know. I feel like the Raiders have kept him on the team just out of like being stubborn. Bill doesn't have him.
Josh McDaniels has said, "Look, Bill, you've had him for the last 97 times. It's now my turn. Yeah, I want him there."
Yeah. So we'll have to see what movement they make come week 1 because they're definitely going to need some depth pieces there.
It was good to see. Sorry, I was just going to say quickly. It was good to see, obviously, for them that they're quite happy with Kayshon Boutte,
right, and Demario Douglas,
and both obviously and Tyquan Thornton as well, just to see how that's going to play out this year. So interesting that that's the path they've gone down with those guys.
Yeah, because going into preseason, I was pretty adamant that I didn't see them both making the roster, but here we are. Let's
was sort of the same.
The Saints now, the one that stood out for me mostly was Lynn Bowden, who just can't seem to get a job, but also Brian Edwards, who was a draft darling from a few years ago now.
See, the funny part is that both Lynn Bowden and Brian Edwards, if anyone cast their mind back to that 2020 draft, they were taken one pick after the other by the Las Vegas Raiders at the time. Yeah. They took them back-to-back picks, and both of them have been cut from the Saints.
Here we are. Bradley Roby on cornerback didn't make the team. Jalen Smith, Jonathan Abram.
He's back on the practice squad.
Practice squad, okay. I think we'll almost certainly see him.
Probably the biggest one actually is probably Jalen Smith.
Yeah.
He was probably the biggest surprise for me that he didn't make the team. One of the offensive linemen who has one of the coolest names is Calvin Throckmorton.
Oh, no, you completely whiffed on Storm Norton. Didn't make the team.
Storm Norton didn't make the team, but Calvin Throckmorton didn't make the team, but he was actually claimed by the Panthers today. So he was one of the guys claimed by the Panthers where they cut Matt Corral today. Yeah. Got Matt Rule on the brain. So some interesting names. Even Jesse James is a name that we've heard of. Tight end.
Tight end. So, yeah.
Some interesting names there that are a bit of a surprise that they're not on the team.
We'll jump to New York now, where the Giants will start with James Robinson. Couldn't make the team, which was, I thought, surprising to see, because like, by all accounts, he looks good. He must be not looking for training camp or something with that Achilles injury still lingering around, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think too, part of that might have been as well. They've got Matt Breeder as a backup who did well for Saquon when Saquon was out.
Yeah, they really like Matt Breeder.
Yeah, and also drafted Eric Gray as well.
He's had a good camp as well, and a great season.
I was more surprised at the wide receivers. So Jaden Mickens is gone, Jamison Crowder is gone, Colin Johnson. I feel sorry for. Last year, he looked like he was in a chance to be their starting wide receiver until he injured himself right before the season started and missed out. But also Cole Beasley.
Yep.
So I think Cole Beasley's on the Giants practice squad. Now, I know that the joke going around with the Giants is that they have every slot receiver in the NFL on their team, but I was a bit surprised by those guys not making the side.
Well, that's it. You cut one and four more pop up in their place.
Yeah.
On the Jets side of things, though, I mean, the only one that really stood out to me was Zonovan Knight, who I think ended up on another team now that I think about it.
He's on the Detroit Lions practice squad.
Yeah, he was claimed, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think so. It was either in the practice squad or on their 53. I think it's the practice squad he's on.
Yeah, okay, practice squad. So maybe he's moved there himself.
The other one that just stood out just because he was probably a long shot to actually make the side was actually Zach Kuntz.
Yep.
So he was just in this last draft cycle that happened. He didn't make the side. He was a bit of a surprise to me.
The disappointing part of that for me is I'm going to have to come up with a new team name in my Dynasty League. Shout out Big Herb's fantastic Kuntz. And Alex Erickson as well was the Cincinnati Bengals wide receiver who has not made the team for the Jets.
And also just looking here, Thomas Morstead, the punter, is not there.
Yeah.
And I guess another name that I can think of is Nick Vigil.
I just saw that. Nick Vigil stood out to me as well.
But they do have a loaded defense, so that's not really too much of a surprise to me that he didn't make that side. But I think there's some, once again, if we move to the Philadelphia Eagles, there's a few guys here who are very surprising to me that aren't on that team.
I mean, the big name has got to be Greedy Williams. Can't get a job. Was he a first round pick?
Yeah.
Or second?
I think it was second. It was either second or...
I'm going to look it up now.
But Greedy Williams was a big name for me. Zach McPherson was one, but obviously he's injured, so there was that. Kayvon Wallace. I was surprised he's gone.
And for all the hype that Trey Sermon was getting as well.
Yeah.
But also, must be said.
Trey Sermon's gone.
Greedy Williams was round 2 pick. He was pick 46 in the 2019 draft.
So you've got him. If you look at also to Greg Ward has been cut. Like Greg Ward always seemed to pop up for Philly whenever they needed.
Yep. Tyree Jackson as well, ex-Buffalo quarterback out of college.
Dan Arnold is another one.
Dan Arnold. I was thinking Aaron Sipos as well. Shout out.
Yeah.
Who's back on the practice squad.
Yeah. So there some interesting names there that have not made the team.
Having said that, though, looking at their depth chart, they've only got the 4 players at this stage with Olamide Zaccheaus and Quez Watkins backing up Devonta Smith and AJ Brown. So I think some guys will be back.
Yeah. The other one, actually, just now that I've scrolled down, I missed this before, was Nicholas Morrow.
Yep.
Linebacker. So he was another surprise for me that didn't make the team. So there's some interesting guys there who didn't make the team for the Philadelphia Eagles, but that just shows how strong a team that they have, where some of these guys can't make the squad. So,
and people want to play there, so I think they know that they can cut these guys, and they'll probably want to stick around.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's jump to Pittsburgh now, where for me the one not too much stood out. And look, they've got plenty of receivers to kick around. So Hakeem Butler didn't make the team. I really wish he was a thing, but he's just never been. The other one I had was Des Fitzpatrick. He spent a couple of years on the Titans team. Can't get a game these days. Was there anyone else for you?
Just having
not too much.
No, not too much. I guess the only other guy is probably more of a It's probably actually two here. Just the one was a special team sort of guy, and Nick Kwiatkowski,
Yeah.
linebacker. He was a bit of a surprise, but also I think to defensive lineman Braden Fahoko. He was a LA Chargers previously, so he was a bit of a name that I was sort of surprised didn't make it from there. But other than that, there's not too many name guys who I'm surprised didn't make that squad.
For sure. We'll jump to the West Coast now, where for the 49ers, Willie Snead, I think sort of his days are a bit more limited. Same with Chris Conley, you could say, previously from the Chiefs, and Anthony Miller, who spent a few years on the Bears as well. Some wide receivers who didn't make the team. I think stood out for me the most, outside of like Kerry Hyder Jr.
Yeah, and I think too, for me, the only other two names I can sort of see that are standing out were Deshaun Jameson, just because he's one of the. I keep referring back to him, but that's because they're my team. But the Panthers were one that they claimed him,
Yeah.
so he's on their the Panthers 53-man roster. But the other one was another Panther. Previous Panther was Miles Hartsfield.
Yeah. Okay.
He was a really, more so special team sort of guy, but a really, I thought a pretty decent guy. So I thought he was actually in with a shot, especially too, as we were sort of talking once again on my show, that will be out by the time you guys hear this. The depth issue that San Francisco will sort of having in that secondary, I thought he was in with a chance of making that team and maybe even having a chance to play. So
yeah,
it was a bit of a surprise.
The other two names that I'm looking at just quickly, Taco Charlton and Breland Eakes, who kicked around a little bit.
Yeah, I forgot about Taco. I thought he was going to be with a chance of just adding depth to that scary front to the 49ers have. So onto your team now.
Yeah, we'll move up to the Pacific Northwest because, like I was saying on your show as well, if you go back and listen to it, I was very happy with how the Seahawks 53 roster has been set out. Jake Bobo making the team has got to be the feel-good story from camp. It was at the expense of Matt Landers and Aesop Winston, who I think had very good preseasons as well. They both look like dynamic players. I know Aesop Winston is back on the practice squad. I'll have to check about Matt Landers. Somehow Holton Ahlers ended up back on the practice squad. I'm not too sure how or why that's happened, but here we are. Cade Johnson had that nasty injury in week 2, so it's sad that he couldn't get in there. Wayne Talapapa was a running back out of Washington College, so he was sort of sticking around in the same area to try and make the team. But he looked okay. And the other one who looked really good in preseason running back was Roderick Thompson, who also had a fairly good camp. But outside of that, I think I did see today, Artie Burns did get cut in favor of, we were talking about Quai Blue Kelly making the team.
Yeah, so
just a few movements.
Yeah, just looking at the Seahawks practice squad so far. So Winston's there, Holton Ahlers is there, Artie Burns is there, Cade Johnson is there, Matt Landers is there.
Yeah,
and Sir Roderick Thompson is there as well.
Yeah.
So
also BBK, Ben Burr-Kirven, did not make the team at linebacker. I'm not sure what he's doing. Same with Joey Hunt, who's been a long-time Seahawks player at center. He did not make the team. Are they on the practice squad?
Joey Hunt is.
And Ben Burr-Kirven?
No.
Okay. So
not at the moment.
Actually, I think I might have heard that he got claimed by another team.
Potentially, yeah. I'm not sure, but Levi Bell was the only. Levi Bell and Patrick O'Connell were the two linebackers who are on the practice squad for the Seahawks.
Yeah, right. And so all in all, I'm feeling very good about this team. I think it'll be good and be good to watch them week 1 against the Rams at home. Let's jump to the Bucks now. I didn't actually really have anyone. Speaking of Seahawks, wide receiver David Moore, who had a good preseason, didn't make the team. And Rodrigo Blankenship, ex-Georgia kicker. But that was it. That's all I had from this team.
Yeah, the only... Just looking at that, I think that's pretty much it. I guess if you wanted to say John Walford, and the only other one is just because his father is a Hall of Fame quarterback is Cade Warner.
Yeah,
they're the only and as you mentioned with David Moore, they're about the only guys who really stand out at all.
I mean, it has to be said as well, Trey Palmer just had such a good preseason in camp. It's awesome to see that he has made the team and he's really solidified his place, I thought, wide receiver out of Nebraska.
Yeah. So, it's, and also, actually, I'm a big fan, too, of the fact that Sean Tucker has, an undrafted free agent running back has actually made that team as well. So,
and he made the team. I hear that they're fairly impressed with him as well. Like, he's moving up the depth chart.
He seemed like one of those guys who was only an undrafted player because he had a heart issue that came out at one stage in the draft process.
Yeah.
So he seems a bit like that Justin Ross, that if he didn't have that issue, he probably would have been drafted.
Yeah.
It just seems like a lot of teams were scared off by that issue, which whenever there's someone with a heart issue or whatever, you can understand why teams might be a little bit wary of picking them.
Yeah, for sure. Now we'll finish with the last two teams, and I got to say, not too much to report from the Titans. The only one that stood out to me was Racey McMath, sort of long-time wide receiver, and when I say long time, only a few years, but and you could potentially say Michael Badgley, the kicker, who they've actually they've acquired another kicker. Who was that? Let me have a quick look. From Nick Folk.
Nick Folk, from the Patriots.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, but like you said, it's really only those two. It's not there's no one else really there who stands out.
Yeah, they put together a fairly good team, I feel. All quarterbacks made the team, which is fairly nice to see. And we'll finish with the Commanders now, the football team. Jake Fromm, former Georgia quarterback, couldn't make the team there. And the only other one that stood out to me was Jarrett Patterson, who was sort of been kicking around at running back for a few years, but now they must be pretty happy with Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson and Chris Rodriguez, the rookie, as well.
That's pretty much it. Jake Fromm is just one of those guys too who I came across in that quarterback one under the lights, the Netflix show.
Yeah,
that was on. And he's also probably a lot more well known by a lot of people for being the guy who made Justin Fields transfer to Ohio State, because Justin Fields was.
Is that right?
Yeah, so Justin Fields is a Atlanta or a Georgia guy, and he actually committed and had his freshman season at Georgia.
Yeah, right.
And then Jake Fromm nearly won Georgia the national championship. He was in that college playoff, and it came to the end of the year, and Justin Fields sort of inquired where they saw him going. They said, well, no, we're going to stick with Jake Fromm because we nearly got to a national championship, nearly won that with him. And Justin Fields ended up in Ohio State, and Jake Fromm stayed at Georgia.
And look at them now.
So, yeah, so that's probably where a lot of fans might recognize him from, was either the TV show or the fact that he made Justin Fields transfer to Ohio State, which a lot of Ohio State fans would be very happy with.
Yes, I think so. In the end, it worked out well for both. That's going to do it. That's all 32 teams and their 53 cuts that of any skill position. Hope you enjoyed that. I think it was a lot of fun to just sort of say these names only a couple more times, but still, I think I'm very excited for the season to start. By the time you're listening to this, college football week 1 will be through it. Next week, we are going to look back at college football week 1 and talk about all our quarterbacks that we projected, our running backs and wide receivers, and see how they all did. Brad, any final sign-off thoughts from you?
No, just ready for the season, and just keep your eyes out also too, just with the Brad Bolt Show next week. We will do a week 1 preview. We'll go through all the games. We might try and predict our winners in those games. And yeah, just ready for the season to start now. We've been waiting for so long. It's time to get it going and spend the next 3-4 months sitting around watching the game. So
you can follow Brad on Twitter, on Twix at BradBolt1. You can follow me on Twitter as well at John Lloyd Roberts, and of course NFL Lab Network as well. And if you're still watching, like and subscribe this, please. Very much helps us. That's going to do it. Enjoy your weekend ahead. Enjoy football. It's here. It's coming. We're very excited. We'll see you soon.